welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Dani and this is Coffee Break with Dani. This is a beauty channel, or so we thought. So we've been around the block a few times. We've been on YouTube for about 5 years and we ventured out from beauty into lifestyle, and after so many requests, now we are doing cooking videos. For those of you that don't know, I used to be a culinary arts instructor back home in San Diego. Now I reside in Dallas, and I taught a culinary arts certification program. Because of so many of your requests to do cooking videos after seeing me show you guys how I do my HelloFresh meals, I thought, you know what? Let's try something new. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we don't have to do it. So I thought for our very first video that we would focus on proper knife safety and sanitation. So what we're gonna do is minestrone. Minestrone is a very simple Italian vegetable soup. Now this is a vegetarian recipe that has a lot of cutting, dicing, slicing, chopping, dicing, mincing, whatever. It has a couple of elements of classic French cooking. So it's gonna be full of a lot of really fun facts. So all of the pertinent information will be listed in the description box below along with the recipe, but I would recommend that you have your finger ready to pause whenever possible, or a notepad or piece of paper handy so that you can maybe write down something interesting that you hear. I will be throwing some vocabulary at you guys. If it is something that I feel is new or maybe not something that you're familiar with, like Mirepoix or onion brûlé, I will explain to you what it is. And then that way, if it ever comes up again, you know what I'm talking about. Now, let's talk about one thing. I read a book. This was a self-help book a while ago that had this theory where not everyone is good at everything. So for example, if I wanted to be a basketball player, I don't care how many times I practice, I'm never gonna be good at basketball. I'm just not going to be good at basketball. I've come to accept that. While that does describe more of my philosophy on life, when it comes down to cooking, there is a place for all of us. There is a level for all of us, and there is that possibility that all of us can make food that is delicious and great and fabulous and everyone in your life will enjoy. It is not something that is exclusive to certain people. It's not something that is genetic. Will it come easier to some? Absolutely. Will some just have a natural gift to cook and just cook up a storm in the kitchen without a recipe? For sure. It's a natural thing that just comes to some people, but everyone can do it. Everyone can cook, you guys. So if you guys will allow me, I'd like to teach you guys how I make minestrone. It is a really delicious soup. It is colorful, it is flavorful, it is nutritionally dense, it is freezer friendly, and it is a meal that my children enjoy. It does have protein, even though it does not have a meat product in it or a meat ingredient. So I think it's something that is a really great start, and it's a really good thing to have in your freezer for those days where you're like, oh no, what am I gonna do? You know what? Just defrost some minestrone, toast some bread in the broiler with some, I don't know, olive oil, rub some garlic on it, do something, add some cheese to it, and you have a delicious hearty meal. This is one of my favorite dishes to cook because if I don't have a vegetable, I could throw a different one in and it just changes the flavor just a little bit. So today we are going to learn how to dice. We are going to learn what a mirepoix is. We are going to learn what an onion brûlé is. We're going to learn how to make the base of a soup. And most importantly, we're going to have fun. So let's get started. So the number one rule when you're in the kitchen is safety and sanitation. And there are so many things that you can do to ensure your safety, to make sure that you're following proper hygiene protocol, like not have your hair down, but let's be honest, I'm gonna enjoy this entire pot of soup by myself, and I already know what my hair tastes like. So, one of the most important concepts that you will learn to make sure that your time is efficient, that you don't hurt yourself, that your recipe turns out the way it's supposed to, that you're not scatterbrained, that you don't burn the food or burn yourself, is the concept of mise en place. And mise en place is a French phrase that you learn in culinary arts that means a place for everything and everything in its place. So if I know that I'm going to need X, Y, and Z of vegetables, I have them all ready to go, washed, clean, ready to go in front of me. If I know that I'm gonna need a cutting board and a knife, I have it in front of me, in place, ready to go. If I know that I'm gonna need 3 different Italian herbs, I have them all out, ready to go. So I'm going to have drop zones and bowls and things like that ready for all of the product that I cut or dice. And everything that I do has its place in my life at this current moment. So the very first thing that we're gonna do is chop everything. But I already know that I'm going to need some boiling water for pasta. I already know that I'm gonna need a pot for the soup. I already know that I'm gonna need a saute pan to char my onion. So do I have those things ready? I do, because it's gonna make my life easier and it's gonna save me a lot of time and also prevent myself from getting hurt, believe it or not. So the very first thing we're going to do is cut our onion in half so that we can create our onion brulee. So an onion brulee simply means a charred onion, and it is a French cooking ingredient that means burnt onion. You take an onion, you cut it in half, and you burn the heck out of it. What is the point of that? The point of this is that you're going to add flavor and color to whatever broth you add it to. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to cut off the top of the onion, you're going to turn it on its base, and then you'll cut it in half. And then it'll be a lot easier to peel your onion. That is a strong onion. And this is a regular yellow onion. It is not a sweet onion. I repeat, it is not a sweet onion. So we cut it in half. We are going to dice one and we are going to char the other one. So let's move along to dicing. We are going to create what is called a mirepoix. And a mirepoix is a mixture of 3 specific ingredients. If you're in the South, a mirepoix is called the Holy Trinity, and you use bell peppers instead of carrots. But we are doing classic French cooking or cuisine, so we're going to use carrots, celery, and onions. And we're gonna do a 2-1-1 ratio. That means double the amount of onions of carrots and celery. So if you're gonna do half an onion, you're going to do half of the amount of that onion in carrots and half of the amount of that onion in celery. As you guys can tell, we have a lot of ingredients that we need to dice, but we're going to do them in order of how we're going to place them in the pot so that we are more efficient. So the first thing that we're gonna do, and always hide your knuckles so that you don't cut your beautiful manicure off, is I'm going to cut the bottom or the root of the onion. You guys can tell where that ends. If you don't cut all the way in or far enough, you're going to get onion that kind of sticks together. You can go in into slices this way and kind of create layers. You guys hear that delicious sizzle? That's your onion brulee. Okay, so I don't like to do that. I think it's a lot more complicated. It makes things a lot scarier, especially if you're not comfortable with knives. You never do this. I see this a lot. Never do this because your finger slips. You get into the heel of the knife and you cut your finger. Never, ever, ever do this, okay? So fold your knuckles underneath. You're going to grab the knife with a lot of confidence. And you're gonna go in on an angle. Do you see what I'm doing there? Down, down. I'm trying to keep my fingers out of your line of sight. And I'm gonna do all of these cuts really slow so that you guys can follow along with me, okay? Now that you have all your vertical slices, you're gonna go in and you're going to make the horizontal slices. I like to use my fingers to really get in there and hold the onion and hold the knife with the same amount of pressure. This isn't a race. It's not about finishing fast. It's about doing a good job and not cutting yourself along the way. So I do have a drop zone here. That's gonna be for my onion. And we're going to cut the carrots and the celery the same exact way or the same exact size. So kind of visualize the size that you cut the dice of your onion, and you want the same size for your celery and for your onions. Celery is really easy to cut because it's not It's not a rocker. It's not a vegetable that's gonna rock on you or make you feel yucky or scared or nervous. It's also a vegetable that gets discriminated a lot because it gets ugly. There are sides of it that look ugly or dirty, and as much as you scrub, it's not gonna get any prettier. You're putting this in a soup. It's not a big deal, you guys. So what you're going to do, like I said, is you're gonna visualize the size of the onion, the dice that you did. This is about a small dice. So you're going to want to make the same size for the celery. For me, that means cutting this stalk in half. Remember not to do this. You want to do this. Go down the stalk. There you have your first stalk. For this one, we could get away with just cutting it in half, but once you get down here to this side, you probably want to cut a little bit of it, just so that it's even. Then again, hide those knuckles, and you're gonna rock your knife and get those slices or that dice the same size as your onion. One thing that's really important when you're cutting is uniformity. If your food is the same size, it's going to cook at the same rate. So we're not going to have super mushy celery and really crunchy onions. It's going to cook at the same speed or the same rate, and you're going to have the same texture throughout your broth, which is ideal for a dish like this. For carrots, same thing. Just cut the little tip off, go to the end, and you want to cut off just the little bit of root that it has. And this is a vegetable that rocks. So I'm going to show you guys a few tricks. If you are a little bit nervous, one trick that you could do is just slice the littlest bit off one side, just like that. And so you create a base for it and it doesn't rock anymore. That's one trick of what you can do. Another trick is you can take your carrot, you can visualize like the size of the dice that you're going to create. And so you cut it in like a stump. So these are like little carrot stumps, and you can stand it up. This makes me a lot more nervous than cutting off a slice like this because it can topple and you can cut yourself, okay? So if you do the stump, you go directly down, but you wanna make sure that you really have it secured tightly, right? You go straight down, turn it, and then you're gonna go straight down again. And so you create quarters or carrot sticks, and you can proceed to do your dice that is the same size as your onions and your celery. So you have your celery, you have your onion, and you have your carrot. So they're all about the same size. So you can do your little stump trick. You could shave a piece off of the side of the carrot, or I just go in with the carrot and I kind of already have an eyeball idea of how much it actually rolls or how nervous it actually makes me. I have enough experience to know how to hold it, you know? Make sure that your cutting board is always dry. If you have a cutting board that slides around your counter, this one has these really awesome like rubber grips, so it's not going to slide. If your cutting board doesn't have that, wet a kitchen towel or a paper towel and put it underneath your cutting board, and it will secure it to your counter, and it will make sure that you don't hurt yourself by having a sliding cutting board. All right, so this is our onion brulee. I just charred it in a basic stainless steel saute pan. It's supposed to be burnt to a crisp. The bottom part is fine, it looks raw, but the top part or the inside of the onion is completely 100% charred and burnt to a crisp. That's what you want, because this is what's gonna add flavor and color to our soup, and that's what we want. We want that dimension, we want that depth of flavor, we wanna add that smokiness to a soup that's not gonna be cooking that long, but no one needs to know. Okay, the last item that I wanna show you how to cut is a bell pepper. I feel like bell pepper is one of those vegetables that has a lot of waste. So many people get nervous cutting it. They get seeds everywhere, they make a mess. There is such an easy way to cut this, you guys. You're not gonna believe it. Other than that, we're gonna go in and cut the rest of these vegetables. And these are gonna be simple because we're gonna use the same rolling techniques that I showed you with the carrot. So with the bell pepper, it looks like this. I like to use orange just because it's prettier and it creates variety. You could use red, you could use green, whatever one's on sale, even yellow. So take your bell pepper, stand it up. What you're gonna do is cut a side of it off, just like that. Turn it, cut another side of it off. Keep going until you've taken off all its sides. Let's take off this, because it's getting in the way. So you're gonna keep going. Now you're gonna cut off this side. You're gonna go around and you're gonna cut off the last side. Turn it on its side. You will cut off the base. If you want to get into this, you can do that. If you want to, save the product. What I would suggest doing is something that might make a mess on your cutting board, but you'll get every little bit of bell pepper off of the seeds. So you see what I'm doing? Kind of rotating it. And all you have to do is pull off the actual yummy part of the bell pepper. So what we have are bell pepper steaks. That's what these are called. So sections or sides of a bell pepper are bell pepper steaks. And just like before, we're going to cut these the same size of the carrots, the onions, and the celery. So we want to do the same size of dice. If you have younger kids and you want to change the size of the dice, you can do that. I like to make the dice pretty big because it makes it freezer friendly. Because if I have a toddler in the house that likes to eat finger foods, it's big enough where they could grab it with their little fingers and eat it. It's big enough where, like I said, it freezes nicely and it doesn't get mushy. It's big enough where I could cook it in advance, like say in the morning, and then I can reheat it later and it's not going to get mushy. One big tip when cutting bell pepper, and I'm just trying with the top portion. This is just the top part. I'm trying to make it look as uniform as possible. There's not much you can do with that weird section, right? So when you take your steak, your bell pepper steak, don't cut it with the shiny side out. Cut it always with the flesh side up. So the flesh is going to allow you to really get your knife in there. It's kind of like when you're trying to cut a tomato and you try and cut it and you just squish all the juice out because the outside skin is too shiny and it's hard to get through without a serrated knife. So always cut it with the flesh side up. Let me show you. See how hard that is? Most of us don't keep chef sharp knives in our homes. We just don't. Most people don't have knife maintenance. We don't take them to get sharpened every 3 months like you're supposed to. We don't have a knife sharpener at home. We don't hone the blade the way we're supposed to. So we cheat. We keep the knife and we just hope it works, right? So we've got to help ourselves by creating these sort of like safety tricks to make sure that we don't hurt ourselves. So always flesh side up. Time for the lineup. There's the bell pepper. There is the carrot. And let's find a celery. There's our celery. And I need an onion. Where is our onion? There it is. And there's our onion. So safe to say they're all about the same size. That's what we're shooting for. Don't be hard on yourself. Practice, right? Practice, practice, practice. I would rather your cuts be not uniform than for you to hurt yourself, okay? So keep that in mind. Safety always first. Now I'm going to cut the zucchini. We have a yellow summer squash here. We have a green zucchini and we have 2 potatoes. I'm gonna cut these. I'm gonna speed through the footage just so you guys can see a little refresher course on how to properly dice these vegetables. Make sure, fold those knuckles underneath, you guys. Do not put your finger across the blade. And like always, you guys, have fun. and this is something that I have my mom help me with every time she comes to visit. So a lot of us aren't big fans of cutting onions or peeling garlic. So when my mom comes to visit, she gifts me, with all her love, a bag of peeled garlic. She will spend hours in my home peeling lots and lots and lots of heads of garlic. Now, I like to squash garlic. Like, I smash it because most of the time I use it minced in my dishes. Can we talk about how loud the kettle and the pot of pasta is right now? Anyway, so she gifts me the gift of a bag full of garlic cloves. It's super practical, super handy. However, if you are not comfortable with a knife, if you are not familiar handling a knife, it can be very, very challenging to cut or mince frozen garlic because it's like a little ice cube. So if you go in with the sharp blade on a hard ice cube, it's just gonna slide across the cutting board and you can hurt yourself. You could hurt yourself really badly. So I'm gonna show you guys how I mince garlic from head to finish safely. But this is an amazing kitchen hack. So if you guys can do this, it's a lot cheaper to do it yourself than to go and buy the little jar at the supermarket. So mincing garlic is super important because you get that fresh garlic taste. It's a really great foundation flavor for a ton of dishes. Your garlic comes like this. This is called a garlic head. Once you pluck off the cloves, they look like this. Right? So what you do, and the easiest way to do this, and you have to be confident, this is like when you go in to pet a dog that you've never met before. You go in confidently. Otherwise, they sense your fear. You want to be confident. So what you do is you're going to take your garlic clove, make sure it's not kind of rocky, take the knife, and with the blade pointing out away from you, you'll place it gently over the garlic clove and smash. Lift up your knife and you should have a smashed garlic clove and the peel comes right off. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys how to do that one more time. Take your garlic clove, your knife with the blade facing out away from you, always away from you, and smash. Flip your knife over, take off the peel. It should come off super easy. I mean, it just completely slides off. Do you see that? No struggle, no hassle, no nothing. So there you have another one. And you just keep going till all your cloves are nice and smashed. So make a little pile of your smashed garlic clove, make a little pile of the skin, move over all that nice, delicious peeled garlic. Now we're gonna mince it. Mincing it, you have a couple options. You can just cut the heck out of it over and over and over. You can add coarse salt to it to create some sort of abrasion, kind of like when you're exfoliating your face, right? And some face exfoliators have those physical granules that you can feel. If you add chunky kosher salt to this, you're adding seasoning, but you're creating an abrasive surface, so you're gonna mince it a lot easier. But I don't like to add extra salt if I don't need to. So I just rock my knife back and forth, holding the garlic clove, sliding slowly back. If you guys hear some sneezing, it's your pal or Nesta trying to get in on that action. Scrape the sides of the knife. Always use the back of the knife, always the back, not the blade. Regroup. Same thing. Rocking motion. Do you see how my finger is not on the top of the knife? Never on the top of the knife. Never on the top of the knife. If you remember one thing from this video, you guys, knife safety. We can actually put all this minced garlic in with the carrots, the celery, and the onion. We're just about to get started with the actual cooking process, but before we do that, I did want to share with you guys some pantry staples or pantry must-haves. These are ingredients that you should always have on hand at all times. A, because you can create an easy meal. B, because it's almost like mindless seasoning and flavoring of your food, and it's kind of a good idea because they're so basic that you can make your own easy meals with several of these seasonings and flavorings or ingredients. So The first staple I would say is a low sodium broth. It could be vegetable broth, it could be chicken broth, it could be seafood broth. Any sort of low sodium broth is always a really good pantry staple. I like to have it on hand because when I am having one of my crazy, insane, busy mom days and I'm gonna make my kids an instant soup, I feel a little bit better about myself if I add broth instead of just water. Does that make sense? So I'll take a bag of frozen vegetables. I'll take just regular like garlic or onions that I have in the freezer. I'll saute that up with some pasta, frozen vegetables, and some broth, and there, instant soup. You know what I'm saying? Okay, other than that, crushed tomatoes. Preferably crushed tomatoes that, again, have no salt added. You don't want anything to stack the deck against you. If you're layering too much salt and you're not familiar in the kitchen, you can create dishes that are way too salty. So always opt out of salt if the option is presented. And the best tasting tomatoes are the San Marzano tomatoes. So if you can find that variety in the canned crushed tomato version, get those. Then we have kidney beans. If you're anemic, if you're iron deficient, if you have a picky eater, if you have a child that hates eating meat, kidney beans are your friend, y'all. But there is a trick to canned kidney beans. Always drain them and always rinse them. Always. Always. I promise you, if you didn't like them, that's probably why. So this is just an organic variety from my local supermarket. There's no rhyme or reason to kidney beans, you guys. Just get something that's on sale. Always make sure you rinse them. Kidney beans, pasta. Always have pasta. A variety of pasta, you guys. Picky eaters, sometimes they're picky because of lack of knowledge. Other times they're picky because they're bored. They're bored of seeing what's in front of them, because most of us statistically have, I think, 4 or 5 dishes in rotation that we just make over and over and over again. So people get tired of seeing the same thing and we think they're picky, but really they're just bored. So I like to keep small pastas on hand, a variety of small pastas, and so it makes it fun. It makes it, you know, easier to pick at or grab with your fingers or with a spoon, especially if you have little ones. So one of my favorite is the organic oriquete from Target. These are the little ears. I also get just basic macaroni, and always make sure that you get the small macaroni because pasta almost doubles in size once you cook it. This is one of my favorites, and I only find this one with my HelloFresh meals. So I have a really hard time finding, it's called twin pasta or twins, because they're 2 noodles that are wrapped together. How cute is that? It's so pretty. And then I just found this one. I haven't actually tried it, but this is vegetable pasta, or rather dyed with vegetable dyes. And it's the Radiatore. I hope I'm saying that right. So the color of the pasta is derived from like the chlorophyll of green vegetables, the anthocyanin of red vegetables, so on and so forth. So this would make your dish a lot more fun to look at or fun to eat because it's a shape that maybe your kids haven't seen, or it would just add another layer of color and fun and spunk to your dish. A couple of flavorings that I want to talk about, and this is a big lesson. The difference between seasoning and flavoring. So when you're gonna season your dish, you're going to enhance the flavor. When you're going to flavor your dish, you're going to change the flavor. So if I were to go in with salt, I'm seasoning my dish. I'm enhancing what's already there. If I'm gonna go in with herbs, rosemary, thyme, oregano, I am changing the flavor. I'm adding a different level of flavor, something that wasn't there already. So salt will enhance, MSG will enhance, bouillons will enhance, but herbs, pepper, spices, all of those change the flavor of your foods. Curries, garam masala, I can go on and on, but basically herbs, spices, those will change the flavor. Things like salt, MSGs, those will enhance the flavor. So a couple of my permanent, always in rotation, I basically add them to everything, are 3 herbs, rosemary, thyme, and oregano. I get them in their whole version so that I can crush them myself if I need to. I feel like they add a really nice whole rustic flair to my soups and broths and sauces that I make. And then I also, I grew up in a 100% Mexican household. So if you didn't have nor Suiza, tomato, chicken, beef, and added it to everything, are you really Mexican? So it still is and will always be one of my favorites. I keep the chicken and the beef in the small sizes, but the tomato, you always get the big size. You guys, trust me, even if you're not Mexican and you didn't grow up using this ingredient, buy the big size the next time you're at Walmart or order it on Amazon and add it to everything. Add it to rice, add it to soups, add it to sauces. It is so good. Basically what it is like a tomato flavored salt, right? Pretty sure it's all MSG. I'm not condoning the use of MSG, but in moderate quantities, it is something that adds a really beautiful, delicious flavor profile to a lot of your dishes, especially if you're a fan of Spanish rice. You go to Mexican restaurants because of that delicious rice, right? This is what's in there. So I'm not saying use a big heaping spoonful of it, but if you add it to certain things that have broth, like a broth process or like a steaming process, it's gonna really enhance the flavor of your dishes. But enough of that business. Who's ready to cook? All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're gonna do is boil our pasta. I have a pot of boiling water here. I'm going to add some chunky sea salt. So I take a heaping, kind of like palmful of salt, and I add it to my boiling water. For the purpose of this video and to make our soup look amazing and delicious, we're gonna go in with small elbow pasta or macaroni, the kind that you get in your kids' art project. Don't use that one, but we are going to add, I would say, about half a cup of it. Bring our pasta to a boil. We give it a great stir, and then we monitor it. Just leave it alone, you guys. It takes 8 to 9 minutes usually. Sometimes even less. And because we are going to add it to a hot broth, you could even take it out when it's just parboiled and finish cooking it in the soup. What's gonna happen is the starch on the pasta will thicken the soup and it will kind of just make everything come together. Totally up to you though. Okay, now for the actual soup portion, which has taken us long enough. See, this is the problem with cooking videos, you guys, is we get into explanation and the details of everything. For example, why I cook with avocado oil. So the reason I cook with avocado oil and the reason that I will always cook with avocado oil, besides the fact that it has no flavor and I could use it on anything and everything, is that I'm squirrely. I forget about things and I don't want to smoke out my house again. Avocado oil is one of the oils that has the highest smoke point, which means it's not going to smoke out your house and like catch on fire if you accidentally forget it. I mean, it will eventually, but it has your back. Anyway, so we're going to add some of that to the bottom of our pot, and we're going to add the Mirepoix and the garlic. When you're using Mirepoix in cooking, it's important to remember that you are not trying to caramelize it. You are not trying to caramelize it. You're trying to create levels of flavor. You're not trying to caramelize it. So the idea isn't to brown it. You want your onions to be like golden and translucent. You want your celery to start looking translucent. You want your carrots to start to get a little bit more tender. And you want that fragrance to kind of fill your space. That's how you know you're doing it right. But you do not want to brown it or caramelize it at all. Okay, so once your onions look exactly like this, which they are virtually translucent, you know they're soft, they're tender, they're delicious, but they're not caramelized, which is exactly what you want, then we're gonna go in with our acid. And our acid component are the crushed tomatoes. Tomatoes are an ingredient that is very high in acid, but once you cook down that acid, you really let it cook down, it's going to turn into a sugar. So it's going to add that like multiple depth of flavor to whatever you're adding it to, which is why crushed tomatoes are added into a lot of tomato sauces, right? Or pasta sauces. So our onions are nice and translucent. Our celery is getting there. We're going to turn down our heat a little bit. We're gonna take our can of crushed tomatoes. We're gonna pour that in. Make sure you get every little bit out of that can of crushed tomatoes. And we're going to cook this for, I would say, 3 to 4 minutes. we want to cook out all that acidity from the crushed tomatoes. A lot of times with ingredients that are canned, they do become highly acidic. So because we can't rinse crushed tomatoes, we're going to cook out the acid instead and make it sweeter, make it more delicious, and basically awesome. Okay, so once we've given our crushed tomatoes enough time to sweeten up and to cook out that acidity, we are going to top it off with a liquid. Now, my recipe says use water. Top it off with water and get your soup broth going. But if you have picky eaters in the house, or you want to make your recipe a little bit more nutrient dense, you can go in with a vegetable broth or stock. You can go in with a consommé, or you could go in with a chicken stock, which is what I'm gonna do today. So I'm going to take just an organic, low sodium chicken broth. I'm going to add that to my tomato Mirepoix base. And then if I still need more liquid, I will go in with water. So the primary source of liquid will be our broth, and I'm starting off with a quart. You are making this based on the size of your pot and your ingredients. So a quart wasn't enough for me. I still have to go in with more liquid. So I already had some water in my kettle boiling, ready to go. Now remember that it's super important to continuously adjust the temperature of your cooking. So if you're gonna go in with cold ingredients, you have to crank up the heat. If you're going to go in with hot ingredients, turn down the heat or it's gonna splatter on you and burn you. So when I'm making rice and I'm sauteing the rice with onions and garlic and I go in with boiling water, I turn off the rice mixture first. If I'm going to, I don't know, cook steaks. I take my steaks out ahead of time. I bring them up to room temperature. I crank up my saute pan and I put in the room temperature steaks in a scorching hot pan. So it's all about creating that like equilibrium or that balance. If your food is cold, crank up the heat. If your food is already hot, turn off the heat. It's all about that balance and making sure that you're safe. This is the most important step of the entire process. This is where we season and flavor our soup. We're going to go in with bay leaves. I'm using 2 because I'm not gonna cook it as long as I would like to. I will continue the cooking process at a later time, but I'm gonna go in 2 to get that extra flavor quicker, right? But otherwise you would just use 1. Then I'm gonna go in with a good amount of oregano. This is the first herb that we're going to use. When you're using a dried herb, you wanna make sure that you rub it between the warmth of your palms and you're sort of crushing it to release the oils in the herb so that you get maximum flavor out of it. So kind of rub it between your palms, sprinkle it in your soup. We're gonna go in now with thyme. So we're going in with thyme and we're doing the same thing. We're kind of rubbing it between our palms. So it's crushing it and it's also bringing out the essential oils to the surface. This is rosemary. Be careful with rosemary, especially when it comes like this. A lot of rosemary is pre-crushed. This one is not. So this is like a splinter. So you wanna be really gentle. Don't be too crazy because you could totally stab yourself with the rosemary. This isn't something that's gonna crush easily, but it is going to add essential flavors. Do you see how it's like sticking to my skin? Gotta be careful. You could even go in with a knife if you wanted to kind of give it a rough chop. After that, let's go in with our nor suiza tomate. So this is a tomato bouillon. And you wanna start off with a light hand first and then add more if you need to. So this is about a tablespoon. This is about 2 tablespoons, and then I would say half a tablespoon. So about 2.5 to start with. We'll give this a stir, and then we'll give it a taste. We still have to add pepper, black pepper. Oh my gosh, I forgot how delicious that was. Go in with fresh cracked pepper. This is up to you. This is a flavoring, so it will change the flavor of your soup. But this is also something that is optional. If you don't like it spicy, just add a little. If you like it spicy, add a lot. If you like it normal, add the right amount. Then we're going to plop in our onion brulee. I like to put it in face down. Just drop it in there. And we are going to let this simmer for a good, comfortable amount of time because the vegetables that are in here are the Mirepoix, the carrots, the celery, the onion. They can stand the temperature. We don't want to go in with anything else for now. Just let this hang out, let all the flavors come together, and then we'll start adding vegetables. Okay, the rest of the process is gonna come together like bam, 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 super fast. Stay with me, okay? We're gonna go in order from ingredients from toughest or longest cooking time or most resistant to heat to softest or quick cooking vegetable. Does that make sense? So the ones that are gonna take the longest or the ones that take the stronger or the lengthier amount of cooking time, the ones that can handle the heat are gonna go first, like the beans, the bell peppers, and then the softest, the ones that are spongier, will fall apart, will get translucent a lot quicker, will go last. So what do you think is gonna be the first component to the soup? Can you take a wild guess? I bet you can. It's not a vegetable. It's a legume. Is that a vegetable? I don't remember. Whatever, you guys. You know what, you guys? I can't know everything. Like, I can know a little bit, just enough to defend myself in the kitchen a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, so we are going to add the drained kidney beans, and the way that you know that you have successfully drained them is because they no longer foam. No foam means good. Foam, they're still dirty. So rinse them until there is no more foam. The other ingredient that can take a lot of heat is bell peppers, believe it or not. They have a very, very tough skin. You could put them in at the same time that you do your kidney beans. Give these a gentle stir, and we are going to let them cook for, I would say, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Just let them hang out, absorb all that delicious tomato broth, and then we'll go in with the zucchini, the summer squash, and the potatoes. Okay, you guys, I told you this comes together very, very quickly. Now we're gonna go in with the summer squash, the zucchini, and the potatoes. Remove the onion brulee and the 2 bay leaves. You gotta be really careful because the broth is really hot. Take your time, use a slotted spoon if you have one. Remove the bay leaf or bay leaves. You could have used 2 if you like the flavor as well. Soup should be finished by now. The last step would be to add the pasta. Now, I'm a little conflicted with that step because pasta continues to cook with hot liquids. So if you're going to add the pasta now and you're going to reheat the pasta later and you're going to freeze it and then defrost it and then heat it up again, you're gonna have a mess of pasta. So I like to cook pasta in really small amounts. Once it's cooked, I put it in the bottom of the bowl, I serve the hot soup over it, and I stir, and I pretend like it was a part of the soup all along. This is a step that's really important, especially if you want to freeze the soup. Leave the pasta out of it and just cook fresh pasta every single time you're going to reheat or defrost the soup. This is one of those soups that gets better the longer that it cooks because the vegetables start to kind of fall apart and they make the broth a lot creamier. So it's perfect to add things like charred or mustard greens or spinach, those like green, real leafy green vegetables that kind of give it a more rustic look, but you can leave that out, of course. Now, if you don't even want to put the pasta in there, you don't have to. It doesn't do anything for flavor. It just creates more girth in the dish. But you already have that from the potatoes. You already have that from the beans. So this step is totally optional. I have my pasta ready to go. My soup is done. And the last thing we need to do is just plate it. So I'm going to show you guys my final plate. I just put the pasta in, pour in the broth, give it a little stir, sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on it, and then you can serve it with whatever you want. Crusty bread, a side salad, some grilled chicken. I mean, the world is your oyster. See what I did there? Oyster, because it's food and you eat it, but no? All right. All right, you guys, so we ladle in our soup. Then we are going to take some fresh grated Parmesan, and this kind of adds flavor. Can you guys hear Ernie in the background? She's being ridiculous. So fresh grated Parmesan, we sprinkle it on top. It adds a little bit of saltiness, but it'll also make your broth a little bit more creamy. You can add more if desired. And then I, just for kicks and for garnish, I like to add some freshly minced parsley, and this is Italian flat leaf parsley, not the curly kind. And you have your delicious bowl of minestrone soup. Now, this is missing, in my taste, or in my opinion, it's missing a leafy green. A leafy green always makes this dish a lot more interesting. So like a spinach, or you could even do a kale if you cook it long enough. I like to serve it with some crusty bread that is coated in either olive oil and then rubbed with a clove of garlic. I prefer mine on the crustier side so you can actually dip it into that delicious broth. But other than that, that's our finished product. And there you have it, you guys. And it wouldn't be a proper cooking video without a taste test. But I do want to apologize because we are competing with my loud oven. So how beautiful does this look? I mean, we eat with our eyes first, and a rule of thumb is the more colorful your food is, the better it is for you. So you want to pick really bright, happy vegetables that are going to not only, apparently we're annoying Ernie, not only make your eyes eat, but you're also going to enjoy it, and it's going to be very good for you, very healthy and nutrient dense, which is what we want for our families, right? So, it's still super hot. Like I told you guys, this is one of those dishes that just gets better and better the longer you cook it. It will get softer, it will get mushy. If you're not a fan of mushy vegetables, then you kind of tweak the recipe to adjust it to the texture of the vegetables that you prefer. So all of the videos that I'm gonna show you guys are going to be easy customizable. They're going to be able to fit your lifestyle. If you don't like carrots, leave out the carrots. If you don't like your vegetables soggy, you can cook them less. So all of these recipes, you guys, it's savory cooking. Cook with your heart. Make those adjustments that your family will enjoy. So let's kind of recap a little bit why I wanted to do this recipe. So minestrone is one of those soups that everyone loves. You can pick your pasta shape. You can pick the vegetables that you want in there. It's one of those recipes that is very easy to freeze. So I left out my pasta. You guys can see it right there in the colander. I left out my pasta. What I'm gonna do now is once that pot of a lot of soup cools, I'm going to divide it into freezable containers, and I'm going to plop it in the freezer. And any time that I want to cook, I will put it in the fridge the day before, 2 days before, or I can defrost it in the microwave, which is not my favorite, but you can. And then I'll cook like half a cup of pasta and stir that in, and that's what I'm gonna feed my family. It is a light soup. It's going to give you a full feeling because of the starch in the pasta, because of the starch in the potato, because of the heft in the kidney beans. You can swap out the kidney beans. If you don't like kidney beans, you could use garbanzo beans. So it's a really cool recipe. It's gonna help you practice your temperature control in the kitchen. It's going to help you practice your knife skills, your chopping, your dicing. So did you see how the soup just all came together at the same time? That would not have happened if our vegetable shapes or sizes were varying. So if my potatoes are really big and my zucchini was really small, or vice versa, something would have been overcooked while something was still raw. So it's really important that you time your cooking. But one thing that I do want to stress is, I don't know if you noticed that my cooking style is from here. So I'm not big on measurements. If you don't like black pepper, leave it out. You know, if you're not a fan of MSG, you don't want to use the Nor Suisse or the tomato bouillon, leave it out. Use salt. You could literally just use salt. You have enough flavor from the crushed tomatoes that you don't need to use the tomato bouillon. Will it change the flavor of the recipe? Absolutely, but it's still gonna be amazingly delicious. So while I do not follow recipes to the T, I do have a recipe that I can provide for you guys, and it will be listed in the description box below. Anything else, like where my dishware is from, or my favorite brand of cutlery, or the brand of colanders, or my pots and pans, the stuff that I prefer to use, all of that, given the space limitation, will be listed in the description box below. I would really love your feedback. Keep in mind that this is what I used to do back home. This is what I would teach. Can't really help you much on the length of this video. It's important to cover all bases, from safety to sanitation to the reason we do things to vocabulary behind stuff. Once you have a really good foundation and understanding of things, everything else comes to you so much easier, you know? So I could just fast forward through everything, or I could just chop away and not tell you why I'm cutting things a certain size, but it's more important for me that you take away you know, the lesson in things as opposed to the final product. You know, it's kind of like the journey and the lesson as opposed to showing up for the test. Anyway, so any feedback that you guys have, please leave it in the comment section below. But aside from that, I do have a list of things that I would like to teach you. I kind of want to do these videos maybe once a month. It does take me about half a day to do and about half a day to edit, so it is a long process, but I have to tell you, I haven't felt like this in a really long time. So thank you guys for reminding me of how much I miss teaching this subject. It's exciting. It's exciting that you guys care to learn. So I'm excited to teach as long as you'll have me. Anyway, that's it. Y'all know what to do. If you found this video useful, entertaining, and learned something, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, this coffee break is over. Bye guys!